Confident, confident, confident. I can be confident, 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 confident. I can be confident at work.
Hello and welcome to the Confident at Work podcast. I'm your host and your confidence coach, Anna Manning. And today we're talking about deciding ahead of time. And for some reason, I'm recording this for you first thing in the morning. So that's probably why my voice feels like it's about 3 octaves lower than usual. Anyhow, deciding ahead of time. And by this, I mean deciding, choosing before something happens, how you're going to respond to yourself when it does. So let me give you a quick example. I'm coaching a client who wants to feel more comfortable and confident speaking up in a senior setting. And this client sometimes, and with thanks to her because I've shared this with her permission, feels that she starts speaking too fast when eyes are on her. And then she can get confused and just have to stop and start again. And while we're working through this, I know she's going to have moments where it still happens. And one of the things which is getting in the way of her confidence and ironically making this issue harder is that she judges herself so harshly when it happens. She tells herself, oh my God, I can't do this. I shouldn't be here. What are they thinking about me? This is ruining my reputation. Just because she's spoken a bit fast and then stumbled over her words. One of the things now helping to maintain this problem is that really harsh judgment and criticism that she's piling onto herself after it happens. So, in order to do the change work we want to do, I want her to think about how and decide how ahead of time she's going to speak to herself if she speaks too fast and stumbles. Her standard way of doing it is, like you heard, criticism, shaming herself. And instead, I'm asking, okay, you need to decide what is going to help you pick yourself up and move on in a way that you want, which is like calmly and confidently. And she said, if I think, oh, well, so she has decided ahead of time that if that thing happens, she's going to say, oh, well, and move on. Now, will it necessarily work perfectly? Not necessarily. But what I know is this, it is a lot more likely that she is going to respond to herself in that way if she has decided ahead of time. And there are so many moments in people's day, maybe even in your day, where you might give yourself a hard time, beat yourself down, and it is making the problem of feeling confident at work harder and more elusive. So in this episode, I'm going to tell you about why confidence sometimes requires a bit of preparation. I'm going to talk to you about the power of deciding ahead of time. And I'm going to remind you, or maybe even give you this concept for the first time, that you actually get to choose how you treat yourself. I'm going to give you some examples and I'm going to encourage you to kind of create your own self-leadership plan. I'm going to take you through some common objections because I know some people are going to be like, oh, I don't think I can do that because, but Anna section. And then I'm going to give you a bit of a challenge. So why confidence requires a bit of preparation? The moments that I think matter most to your confidence are probably the most uncomfortable ones. So where you have failed or you've made a mistake or you've stumbled and you feel embarrassed. Confidence isn't really built in those comfortable moments. It's built in how you manage yourself when things don't go so smoothly. And that's why there's a lot of power in deciding ahead of time how you're going to deal with those situations. Because like it or not, we're all going to have moments at work where we fail, where we make a mistake, where we stumble, where we feel embarrassed. Deciding ahead of time, or you might call it choosing on purpose, how you're going to treat yourself in those moments can really start to support you building your confidence. When you leave those things to chance, let's say you make a mistake. How do you deal with it when you make a mistake? And you leave that to chance, chances are you're going to default to an old habit, an old way of dealing with yourself, which if you're anything like most of the people that I work with, will often be harsh, will often be critical, will pile on the pressure and will just make it even worse. Now, I know that because that's what I used to do. And that's what my clients do all the time. Being intentional about it, deciding ahead of time means that you decide now when you're not in a tough spot, how you'll respond to yourself in those moments before they happen. If you leave things to the moment where you understandably might feel a bit stressed or feel a bit knocked because, for instance, you've made a mistake, that is not the moment where you want to be deciding how you're going to manage yourself through that. No, 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 no. You're going to get hijacked if you've left it to that point, unless you have like an iron will. You want to decide ahead of time. If X happens, if I make a mistake, this is how I'm going to treat myself. Do not leave it to chance. Do not leave it to the moment where it's going to be the absolute hardest to do the thing which is going to support your confidence in the long term, which is treat yourself fairly and with respect and appropriately. And I want to remind you that you get to choose how you treat yourself. Most people who I introduce this idea to are like, what? And maybe that's how I felt the first time someone introduced it to me. I can't really remember now. It was so long ago. But let's use the analogy of becoming a manager for the first time. Let's say you've become a manager for the first time and someone else is learning how to do something. You can choose how you're going to treat them. If they're learning and they're making a few mistakes, you get to choose how you're going to treat them, right? You can treat them with patience, with support, with encouragement. Doesn't mean you don't point out things that are wrong. You can do that too. But you can do all of that with patience, support, and encouragement. You can do exactly the same thing for yourself. You get to choose how you treat other people. Will it always be perfect? Probably not. But you get to choose, and you can do the same thing for yourself. And I don't think you need to choose how you're going to treat yourself in the moments where everything's going really well. I think you need to choose how you're going to treat yourself when there is an outcome which is less than perfect. In that moment, you have the power to decide how you will treat you. And I'm suggesting it's going to make it so much easier to follow through if you have made that decision ahead of time. So if you're with me on this, and it will support your confidence, believe me, think about making your own plan for how you're going to deal with these things. So let's say when I make a mistake, what then? When I fail, what then? If there's something you do like that client in that meeting, which is routine for her, if I speak too fast, then stumble over my words, what then? What are they for you? What are those moments where you might struggle? You might find it difficult. You might find yourself in your head berating yourself, beating yourself up, giving yourself a really hard time. And you know that if you step back and look at that, actually, it's probably just piling on the pressure and making things worse. You might not have another way of doing things yet, but I'm going to encourage you that this is a really practical, actionable step that you can take. So let's say I'm going to put my plan together. I'm going to say, okay, if I make a mistake, I'm going to do my best to fix it. If my brain starts to offer a beating up session, I will say, no, I'm choosing to learn from this and move on, which incidentally I do now. Another example, when I fail, I'll remind myself, Anna, I will support you no matter what. I will be with you no matter what. I'm proud of you for trying. I know that you failed and that failure sucks. It's up to you how specific you get with this. You know your own brain, you know your own habits. The key thing is just that you decide ahead of time. And if you can, make a plan, write it down on your phone notes, write it down on a piece of paper, write it down on the notes app on your laptop, so you know you have decided. So I wanted to share some common objections and why I think they're wrong, because as I was going through and planning this episode, I could hear people in my head saying, oh yeah, but Anna, I can't do that because. So, okay, I'm just going to get in there ahead of time and chat to you about some of those objections that you might have. And one of the things that people often tell me is, oh, well, if I'm just kind to myself, I won't learn. Okay, that might be something that you're thinking. So let me express that another way. I need to be beaten up and criticized, otherwise I won't learn. That's basically what you're saying. I used to think that too, by the way. Now, my experience tells me that people learn better in a safe environment than they do from fear. They do learn some stuff from fear, but there is a price to pay, and that price will be your confidence every single time. And I truly have realized that I can learn not through fear, but through being supported. And think about this from your own boss. Do you think your boss needs to be unkind to you and critical to ensure that you learn. You don't want that, do you? You don't think you need that either. You think your boss needs to be supportive and respectful and that will help you learn. So you're no different. And take that wider to organizational culture and psychological safety. This is the stuff that people talk about. They know that teams do better, that individuals do better when people feel psychologically safe, i.e., they're allowed to make a mistake and learn from it without getting beaten up or having a fear of reprisal. We just want some psychological safety inside your own head, please. The next objection that I get is, well, if I don't, it's some version of this. If I don't punish myself, I'll get sloppy. I'll just do whatever. And okay, might be one for you to reckon with. But I don't think that accountability requires cruelty. So think about this. If you had a team, would you be saying, if I don't punish them, they'll get sloppy? If I don't speak to them really harshly and really critically, they'll get sloppy? Is that what you say? Probably not. Now, this brings me to another objection, which is that people kind of go a bit black and white about this. They think either they beat themselves up and be really harsh with themselves, or it's all like, ah, la, 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 everything nice, everything great. That's like a false binary. That's very black and white. Imagine you had a boss and they're either like a tyrannical nightmare who criticizes everyone all the time, or they're just like, la, 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 everything's fine. You don't want either of those bosses. I don't, and you probably don't want to be either of those bosses. You want someone probably who is gonna hold people accountable when things are not right, or if things are sloppy. You want someone who's going to hold someone accountable. You want someone who's going to do that respectfully and fairly, and see if they can provide some support so that people can learn and grow. But you don't want critical, tyrannical nightmare or la la la, everything's great. There is a midpoint here, which often people don't notice, and that's often their objection. So I want you to think about the kind of midpoint manager that you would like. Is it respectful? And at the same time, they're going to say, I want this done better. Here's what we can do next time. Maybe that is the kind of boss you want. So maybe that's the kind of boss you need to be for you too. Another objection that I hear, and I've heard this quite a few times, is that if I go easy on myself, I'll be reckless. And it's really interesting, that one. Like, I'll be a cowboy, I'll be reckless, I'll be dangerous. And I think, really interestingly, most often I have coached people who work in healthcare on this. So you can see that actually their recklessness would be very dangerous. But when we get down to it, for the people that I work with, it just isn't true that they would be reckless. Again, it's like a false binary. It's either I'm so harsh on myself that I destroy my confidence, or I'll be reckless. It's quite extreme. Think of it again as a manager. You don't think, unless I really go harsh on this lot, unless I really show them who's boss and criticize them for everything they do, they'll be reckless. Now, if that is your team, then woof, I don't know. But do that honest reflection in yourself. If someone's not being really harsh and being really critical, would you suddenly jump to being reckless? What do you know about yourself? What do you know about your level of care and professionalism? I would suggest for most people, it's not that they would suddenly become reckless if they were treated appropriately. So I'm inviting your reflection here. What is your own objection, if you have one, to being supportive of yourself? Most people have one, but what is your objection? And does it stand up to scrutiny? So I said I had a challenge for you, and I do. I'm going to encourage you to make a decision ahead of time. And maybe it's just one thing. If you're not going to sit down, I recommend you sit down and make a whole plan of everything that could possibly go wrong at work and then decide. But maybe you're not going to do that. Maybe just choose one thing. So next time I either make a mistake or I fail or I stumble over my words or I feel embarrassed, something that might go wrong in your day to day, doesn't even have to be big, I will what? Write it down. Come back to it. Look at it. Because if you do that, when that thing happens and your old internal boss tries to take over, you will have a moment's pause where you remember, hang on, we're supposed to be doing something different. And you get to choose in that moment's pause, again, deliberately, how am I going to treat myself now? Remember, confidence isn't built in the moment where things are going perfectly. It can be built or destroyed based on how you treat yourself when they don't. If you want to come and work with me, if you want to build your confidence at work, there are 2 ways to work with me. The first is private coaching, one-on-one, where me and you sit down and we go through your challenges. We look at the key areas that you're struggling with, and we make a plan for how we are going to support you to fix them. The second is you can join, if you're a professional woman, you can join the Confident at Work membership, where we have group coaching, recorded modules, a private podcast, all kinds of good stuff. If you are interested in either of those, head to the link in the show notes, click through and book a time to speak to me. All right, I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.
Confident, confident, confident. I can be confident, 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 confident. I can be confident at work.